In February 2002, 5 Japanese scientists at the Department of Neurological Surgery, Jikei University, published a paper investigating the effects of boxing matches upon 632 fighters. But despite seeming like an important and curious undertaking, seriously sinister undertones lurked behind the study's instigation. It has been common knowledge for some time in Japan that the incidence of boxing-related deaths was considerably higher than that of other countries. Essentially, stepping into a Japanese ring meant your chances of mortality was greater than anywhere else. But why exactly was this the case? Were Japanese boxers routinely trained to target sensitive areas like the solar plexus and back of head? Did referees regularly fail to step in at vital moments, preventing fighters from suffering irreversible damage? To truly understand why so many Japanese boxers have fallen in the ring, we must transport ourselves back to the humble beginnings of the Oriental sweet science.
Right and left, and that is it! History is made in Tokyo, Japan!
It's hard to trace when boxing fully flourished in Japan, but many believe that it began after Matthew Perry, no, not the guy from Friends, landed at Shimoda in 1854. American sailors often engaged in sparring matches on board their ships with their fists wrapped in thin leather. According to Shun Kasahara of the University of Tokyo, a Japanese sumo wrestler called Koyanagi Tsunakichi beat both an American wrestler and boxer in front of Perry. The first exhibition match took place in Tokyo around 1887, yet the sport only fully took off due to Yujiro Watanabe, who had learned boxing in San Francisco since 1906. The first Japanese title matches were held in April 1924, with Fuji Okamoto in the flyweight division and Kintaro Usuda in the lightweight division becoming title holders. Although Japan's boxing was interrupted by the Pacific War, the first Japanese championships were held in 1947, before the Japan Boxing Commission was officially founded in April 1952. But here it gets interesting. According to Joseph R. Svint's study, from 1950 through to 2011, Tokyo was the city with the most boxing fatalities in the world. After the JBC's inception in 1952, 38 Japanese professional boxers died from fight injuries. This figure was considerably more than pretty much any other major city. But why is this? The 2002 study suggested a number of reasons. Notably, the JBC had imposed no rules regarding how long a boxer had to wait who had been knocked out in a fight before participating in another bout. This was likely costly, as boxers suffering the after effects from a concussion could be victim of second impact syndrome, as their brain hadn't fully recovered. This is where my opinion differs from the study, as I think the knockout point is less convincing, but the frequency of fighting and sparring is key. Take Akira Taiga, who died of a brain hemorrhage in a bout against Yoshiaki Matsukura in October 1997. He had fought 13 times professionally within just under a 4-year span, a pretty hectic fight schedule. Lightweight Nobuo Kobayashi, Japan's first ever documented boxing death in 1930, had fought 87 professional rounds by the age of 20 before succumbing to a cerebral hemorrhage. Noburo Oyakawa died in only his second registered professional boxing bout at 22 in 1973, but BoxRec reports that he had likely had 13 unregistered bouts before this. By examining these records of deceased fighters, a pattern does tend to emerge that overfighting was prevalent, although I don't believe it's the most significant factor. After all, other cultures have seen boxers overworked. Unfortunately, in many cases where boxers have suffered in the ring, referees are often culpable to some extent. The majority of studies into Japanese boxing tend to suggest that referees were historically slow to intervene, and I do feel this is backed up by particular examples. On the 31st of August 1964, the New York Times reported the death of Takashi Hasegawa, noting that the featherweight lost consciousness as the referee counted him out. Now, is it just me, or if the fighter is on the verge of going unconscious, maybe giving him a count isn't entirely necessary?
Has done it! Knocking down.
Alright, fair enough. Anyway, 64% of 632 amateur and professional Japanese boxers surveyed in 2002 were in favour of stopping a bout in the event of injury earlier than used to be the case, a certainly sizable figure. Yet the lack of restraint amongst referees wasn't only synonymous with Japan, so it's not the sole factor. Whilst researching, I came across an academic study by Masaru Teramoto from 2018, which is honestly a bit bizarre. It examines whether changing the weigh-in day from the same day of the match to the day before the match and also prohibiting 6-ounce gloves from being used would reduce fatalities in Japanese boxing. The study mentions that both these factors were triggered by a rule change around 10 years prior, but ultimately concluded that the two changes may not result in reducing boxing fatalities. But I'm not entirely convinced by this. If the JBC amended the rules around late 2010, we have only witnessed 2 high-profile boxing deaths in Japan since, namely Teshin Okada in January 2014 and Kazuki Anaguchi in early 2024. I'd argue that just 2 deaths in a 14-year period does somewhat buck the previous frequency of deaths in Japanese boxing, implying the rule change has made an impact. Now, I've struggled to find much information on this, but I'm guessing the gloves have been upped in size, likely to 8 or 10 ounces from 6. Yet MMA gurus will be quick to point out that smaller gloves can actually reduce brain injuries, as the fighter can't hit as hard due to increased hand injury risk, and thus deliver less deadly blows. But this is boxing, where the head tends to take rapid impacts with the absence of any strikes and grappling, so I'm sure even lighter hits, but constant, could cause lasting damage. If Japanese boxing has deployed 6-ounce gloves throughout the 20th century, then this has definitely peaked the fatality rate in my eyes.
An all-action guy, always in your face, never stopped punching. Harada was like a little toy. When the bell rang, he came out of his corner and he threw non-stop punches until the bell rang again.
Now, this is an area that I feel has been overlooked to some degree. Expertly explained by Rich the Fight Historian whilst using Masahiko Harada as a case study, the Japanese boxing style is unique in its intensity. I've covered various boxing techniques by country in a previous video, which I'd recommend checking out, but I omitted Oriental boxing entirely. After reviewing Japanese sparring and fighting footage extensively, it seems to be forward-moving, extremely aggressive, somewhat mirroring the Mexican sluggers but with a stronger focus on technique and consistent jabs. Yet one thing is clear, Japanese fighters show extensive grit, determination and heart, but boy do they take on a lot of damage. Obscene amounts to be exact. One thing I've personally noticed is that a lot of Japanese fighters go into the opening rounds with a high guard, before proceeding to drop to a lower guard as the fight progresses, relying on footwork primarily for defense. When the brutal slugging begins, this puts the boxer at serious risk, often relying upon level changes to avoid hooks and uppercuts. In tandem with the willingness to trade, coupled with immense resilience, a recipe for cerebral damage is unfortunately served. I therefore feel the intensity of Japanese boxing has had a major impact upon the high fatality rate, with boxers being willing to go out on their shield. But what do you guys think? Why has there been so many boxing related deaths in Japan? In all honesty, I've researched the hell out of this topic and I'm still not entirely sure why this is the case. Please help me solve the puzzle. Anyways, leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. More content coming soon. Cheers.